Good morning, friends. Welcome back to another edition of the Nerd Out. I am your host, Jack.
It's Lyle.
And we are here in week 3 of our cultivating kind of Hesed community. That's not the name of the series.
Cultivating Gospel Community.
Gospel community. And then in talking, we talked joy week 1, talked Hesed, sticky love week 2, and then last night kind of looking at this idea of our need for group identity.
That's right.
So any banter that we want?
I don't know.
I don't know if people are tired of the banter. They just want us to get into it, or if they like the fact that we talk about football or sports or for 30 seconds.
Or whatever,
Or whatever about life.
There's so many things in culture. I mean, I could share how I
Happy
got
January.
I got peed on by my cat the other day, so that was fun.
Well, that's interesting.
It's the third time that's happened in my life.
Third time.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was this one was definitely my fault.
Your fault.
My brother, sister-in-law, my nephew were down visiting over the weekend, and my nephew
got to see
was
your house
just
for the first time.
dying to see our cat. We have this. He actually looks like an Instagram model cat. He's a pretty specimen. He actually is very blue eyes.
Does he have his own Instagram?
He doesn't, no.
My dog is bougie and has its own Instagram.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We just don't care enough to want to post and film all those things, So, but yeah, my nephew wanted to see him, and so I pulled him out of the closet where he was hiding under Anya's clothes, and so I'm holding him tightly because I know he's going to kick the fire out of me if I'm not careful. And even just literally stepped out of our bedroom, and my nephew's at the end of the, where you could see him. So he turns around, and I'm holding Merlin, and he flips out, and he's just trying to kick and climb and do anything to get away. And by the time he gets down, I realize that I've got a stain on my shirt. It smells pungent.
Pungent?
And then my wife sees it's on the floor, and she's mad at me and chastising me and you deserved that. So there was an unexpected load of laundry that was done on Saturday evening. But yeah, there you go.
There you go. All right. Quick spelling bee test. Pungent. Stinky smell. Spell pungent.
Oh, man. Could you use it in a... I'm kidding. Pungent is a P-U-N-G...
I literally...
A-N-T?
I don't know. You guys are going to have to Google it because I am the worst speller.
Or G-E-N-T? Yeah,
I am the worst speller. So I'm actually trying to figure out in my head how to spell pungent. It's P-U... Is it D-G?
Well, it's just P-U-N.
P-U-N. Pungent.
E-N-T?
G-E-N-T?
I think it's G-E-N-T. Yeah, G-E-N-T.
Okay. We did it.
Pungent, not
Look
pungent.
at us. We did it, everybody.
So I'm out. I lost.
So, well,
right.
I wouldn't have even made the stage. So
yeah, it's weird. I haven't typed that word in forever to even think about it. So
you don't hear that word very often.
No.
Here's this week's challenge. Somewhere this week, you have to use the word pungent in a sentence. Everybody's in on this game, okay?
All right.
So maybe next week I'll greet someone and have a conversation where I use that word.
May the aroma of Christ be pungent for those who spend time with you.
All right, digress. Banter
That's
over.
your blessing at the end of service on Sunday.
Oh, gosh. It's my lead-in story.
For those who watch the Nerd Out, they'll be like,
he did it. 6, 7. Okay. Sorry. That was a good use, I thought. Sunday night.
Thank you.
All right. Let's get to some key takeaways, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into group identity and what does that mean? How do we foster that? How do we grow that? And all that stuff. So here's some key takeaways. When I forget who I am, I stop acting like myself. Even as Christians, we can stop acting like Christ when we lose sight of our true identity. Number 2, our brains are wired for community. Our mirror neurons in our identity center look at others and reflect what they see. We become like those we surround ourselves with. I feel like my mama and your mama always said stuff like that. Number 3, identity is formed by our strongest attachments. Who we attach ourselves to determines the version of ourselves that we become. Number 4, we need identity statements, not just doctrine. Creeds tell us what we believe. Identity statements tell us who we are and how we act, how we behave and carry that out. And number 5, shame is a gift. It's an indicator that we're not acting like our people, and it's calling us back to our true identity. Mm-hmm. So that's our key takeaways.
Yeah. Key takeaway 5 too. Spoiler alert, that really is setting the stage for next Sunday and what Jack's going to be talking about.
Healthy correction coming.
Mhm.
The train is pulling into the station. Okay. So maybe I'm trying to think of where to begin with. How do we go? I mean, obviously, there's always the what did you cut? Because I know that you cut some things.
Yeah.
So do you want to start there?
We can. Yeah. It really, the main things that I cut, just for the sake of time, would have been to include kind of some more examples of what good identity statements look like. And so in the other half of church, I think it was Michael who talked about as they learned more and more, they started to incorporate this into their small group time. And so they came up with their own identity statements that they would read. And so he included those, and I just skipped through those because we did a lot, like with the Sermon on the Mount alone, and then Colossians 3. We didn't need to inundate people because that's just not helpful either. We don't want to have too much too soon because it takes time for us to process these things. But if you need some ideas, I think these are really good that some of them are pretty profound even, where you're just like, dang. We are a people who are happy to be together, and we create environments of joyful belonging. We are a people who value relationships above performance or productivity. Man, what would the Western church look like if we saw more churches model that?
Amen.
You know?
Well, especially in our culture that measures us primarily by performance and merit.
Especially in just, if I'm being honest, the worship culture. That's something where too many teams will sacrifice the integrity of the team just because they need a good guitar player, a good drummer. And it's just, I don't know. Off the soapbox. We are a people who are faithful friends. I will not abandon you, even when we have a conflict. We are people who would rather listen than speak.
That is huge.
We are a people who see what God is building in others. We are a people who spontaneously love our enemies and return blessings for cursings. We are a people who remind each other who we really are whenever we forget. Here's the one that just is like, dang. We are a people who share others' pain, even when we have caused it. So it's just all about what do we do when we don't act like ourselves? Like we need to have these statements that help remind us to pull ourselves back to remembering who we are, what we're about. Because that's really what it is. Like we can allow emotions, when emotions become too heavy for us to process, which if we're being honest in our culture, we haven't learned how to process a lot of emotions well, especially men. When the only emotion that we're publicly, negative emotion that we really can publicly show and not, jeopardize or take away from our masculinity, it's anger. That's it. So if I'm really feeling disgust, if I'm feeling despair, if I'm feeling fear, that comes out as anger as opposed to what I'm really feeling. And because I don't know how to really feel that, even though I am a Christian, I can very quickly stop acting like one because my thoughts aren't even reaching the identity center. It's not getting to that prefrontal cortex. The amygdala has taken over, if we're going to go into the nerdy science of it. And so I've got to learn how I can pull myself out of that to emotionally regulate myself. Which, fun fact, if you want something simple and you start to feel like you're being emotionally hijacked, just start making a list. Doesn't even matter what it's for. Whether it's, I'm going to name every band that I can think of that starts with a B. And you just start making that list.
Okay, I started.
Band of horses. There you go. Like we've each. So if maybe it's just even sports teams. Like what's your favorite team? Start naming the quarterbacks that you can remember in history for that. Start naming Super Bowl winners. Start naming famous basketball players. Whatever it is, as you start making a list, you're forcing your brain to use the left side of it.
The logic
and
side.
you're teaching yourself how to regulate your emotion so that the emotion doesn't flood your brain with chemicals in such a way that you lose track of who you are. It's basically you're forcing your brain into the slow track to re-enable the fast track to work properly.
So it's about regulation or maybe tempering the fast track from getting momentum in your trying to...
Tempering the fast track from getting derailed, really.
Okay.
Because that, like, if we're getting emotionally hijacked, we're no longer able to get into attunement to that level 3.
Right.
So we're stuck at level 2 when a healthy, properly functioning brain will go through all levels of executive function. It will get to that fourth level where identity and the prefrontal cortex are actually firing off the way that they should. And that's when I'm acting like myself, is when I'm able to regulate emotions in such a way that they don't flood my brain so much that I can't still remember who I am.
Yeah. So this becomes again, these all build on one another. So the idea of having a joyful community that is delighted to see you and
Wants to be
recognizing
with
that
you.
God's delight is upon you, that he's for you, not against you, that he's got this hesed love for you, and then I want to be a part of a community that's building this hesed sticky love, that I'm committed to you. So even when the speed bumps come up, or even when there's difficulty or tensions that we have to navigate, I'm not quitting on you. I'm not abandoning you. I'm not walking away from you. You're not walking away from me. We're going to get through it. And now, because of who we are, again, using these we statements, so maybe let's tackle some of these questions here. How does understanding how our brains are wired for community and group identity challenge the Western emphasis on individualism that is so much infiltrated maybe our Christian faith sometimes? The Christian faith is an individual faith. It's a relationship between you and God. But in the context of our Western mindset and thought, or the narrative that's pushed in our Western mentality, is so individualistic, we miss out on the power of group identity.
Yeah.
Talk about that tension or some of your thoughts as
Sure.
we've been studying this.
But yeah, I mean, we're really bringing this up, weren't we, in August when we talked about mental health? I remember Jordan talking about that when my friend came out. And I would say that Christianity is only individualistic in the sense that God has made every person unique. And so every individual has a role to play as a part of the body of Christ. So there's an individualistic aspect of it. The only other individual aspect that I think I see in Scripture is the decision to confess Jesus as Lord and Savior. That's an individual choice you have to make. But from that point forward, everything else that I see in Scripture requires, or it was designed in such a way that we would operate and function in community or in relationship with others. Which may, for you, you may be struggling. You may feel like you're part of a community of 4, and it's you, the Father, Son, and the Spirit, and that's it. But the beauty is God still sees us even in those moments. And we may feel like, linking it to 1 Kings 19 to Elijah, we may feel like Elijah was
I'm the only one left.
God, I'm the only one. And it's like, no, I can look at it at Element City Church and I can see 150 people who regularly show up, who regularly are seeking to build joyful Hesed community together. And we're not perfect and we're not always getting that right. But I've got a lot of experience. Like I've been a part of Element since it was a service back in 2009. So we're already coming up on 20 years of being just a service, So what a cool thing. We're at 17 years of doing this thing. And I've got some people that you've been in my life for 17 years that we've been doing this thing. So yeah, we don't get it perfect. We don't always get it right, but we're trying. We're doing our best. And I've not been a part of a group of people who are so quick to hold their hand up when they mess up and just try to take ownership of that. Because we do want to do this with humility and do this well and honor God in that. But we look at the Trinity. If God exists in the Trinity before anything was even created, like we just see that the nature of God himself was a communal nature. And then he makes man in the image of himself. And so God designed us to be relational beings. We see it early on. This is why a man shall leave his mother and his father and cling to his wife to become one flesh. That we were designed for partnership. God sees that. Like everything is good in creation. And the first time, as Jack says often, when the record scratch hits, it is not
2:18.
good that man should be alone. So we were designed for relational connection with others.
Right.
And I think that's what describes the attachment side of things, that when we understand neurologically, that's what attachments are about. That even at the root level of our brains and the root of our identity and development from the moment we're born is seeking and craving healthy attachment. And when we don't have those healthy attachments, that's what leads to misusing food, misusing drink, misusing sex, misusing so many things
Power.
because we're just trying to create some fake form of connection that brings some sort of satisfaction or fulfillment, and yet it's always fleeting. Because God designed us to be together in community together, and so we can be snarky about it all we want, but the reality is that's how we've been hard-coded and wired. And so what we're doing in Western culture of, making things so self-centered and so individualized, the algorithm kind of makes itself like one of the things the church is meant to do well is to bring people into community. And the more and more that we've got personalized recommendations in Instagram and our algorithms, or in Spotify even, of what music to listen to, or Apple Music or whatever, we've got such a world that's trying to individualize and cater everything to us. It's almost exposing this need within us to belong to a group even more so, which I think gives the church a really unique opportunity to step into that gap and to provide that. And that's what having a healthy group identity can help us do well.
And I think we talk about it. Group identity is a sense of the we, but it's not trying to remove the individualistic thumbprint that we each bring. Because you're unique, I'm unique, you're wired different than me, I'm wired different than you, and that's a good, healthy thing. Like I look around, I don't get to go to dinner every single Sunday, but being there last night, or just realizing the diversity of people, age and diversity of people, just how people are wired and what, if we go back to
backgrounds, their strengths,
background, strengths, experiences, all that stuff, and it's so unique. And I think that's the beauty of the church, is to be kind of that melting pot of a group of people who will see things differently. But then we get to own this identity as Christians. And that's, again, we made this statement last, Timothy Keller talks about our identity as a gifted or given identity as believers in Jesus. That's what sets Christianity apart from any other world religion, is it's not an identity that you curate or create or craft. It's one gifted to you. And so that's what I loved about the Sermon on the Mount illustration and Colossians 3. So maybe we'll read that one at the end of this time. But so
read the whole Sermon on the Mount?
I know, that's 3 chapters.
So
Colossians 3.
Colossians.
But so you touched on, maybe here's the question, because you touched on this last night. When we think about your idealized ego image, how much of it is shaped by Christ and Christian community versus cultural influence like politics, work, social media, or other influences? Or is there any more you want to touch on the idea of this idealized ego image? Because I thought that was apropos for us to wrestle with.
Sure, yeah. I first heard this. It's a Carl Jung thing, I guess, to talk about like the ego position and then like the idealized ego position and the shame position. I remember first hearing about this in 2020 when someone that I follow online was working with. He wasn't like a licensed counselor, but he was still like he provides a lot of counsel. It's this Scottish guy who lives up in the Highlands, and a lot of really top level, for lack of a better way to put it, but a lot of the Christian pastors and authors and songwriters that you would recognize their content, they go to this guy. And so he was the one who was talking about how we have this idealized image of ourselves. And reading about the neuroscience stuff, it's so clear that that's based on our attachments. That's based on the people that we see as our people. So if I grow up and I'm surrounded, by gang rivalries and whatnot, that's going to form my idealized ego of, well, I need to always show strength. I can never show weakness. We can never allow an insult or any form of disrespect to slide. We always must retaliate. That's what defines my position of strength. And that's an extreme example, but we'll put it here. Like maybe you're in your 30s, like if I'm in my 30s and I'm kind of in that cusp between wanting to hang with people who are younger than me or people who might be slightly older than me, and just depending on my phase of life and the things that I've gone through, if I see myself and my people as the younger folks, I'm going to constantly try to relate better to them and surround myself with people younger than me to make me feel young, even though maybe the people who are like my age and slightly older that I don't connect to as well, it's because that's not my ideal ego position. So I'm limiting myself from friendships that would actually help me grow, and people who might be farther along in life and have more maturity than I do. I'm not getting to receive that because that would lead to my shame position of feeling like I'm old or feeling like I'm over the hill or like I'm past it. And that's a young place to be at and start feeling that way. How much more so when you start getting into your 50s and your 60s where that can change too. So we've got to just recognize who are the people that we see as our people, because that matters significantly. If they're not Christ-like, joyful, Hesed modeling people, then I am not seeing my idealized ego position is not going to be one that will lead me to be formed into the image of Christ. It's going to lead me to be deformed into something else. And that's a zero-sum game. Like there is no neutral position to that. At all times, I'm either being conformed into the image of Christ or I am being deformed into the image of something else that is less than and not as beneficial for me.
It's not a neutral position.
Exactly. So it's okay to have the ego, the idealized ego position. We all have the way that we want to be perceived. As long as we're aware of it and aware that even the shame position, that shame position is something that has been given to us for a reason by God. And so we can't just stuff it and pretend it doesn't exist. We have to recognize where it's useful. How does it help me? And that's really what next week is going to be about, is how does shame help me be conformed into the image of Christ and not deformed into narcissistic behavior.
Or into something less than my identity of what I've been gifted in that.
I don't even remember if that was the question, if I answered it. But
yeah, I think,
Okay.
I think maybe let's go back to just simple of my people. How do I evaluate who my people are? And how do I take, so like when I survey my life, what are some things or thoughts maybe you can give me or give us that kind of wrestle with this idea of how do I assess where I'm getting my group identity from and if I need to change it? Is that part of the wrestling match? Are there a couple of questions that I can begin to wrestle with? We can begin to wrestle with to go, hey, how do I take stock of where I am and who my people are and if I need to change it?
I think you have to start by identifying what is your idealized ego image. So can you get honest about who is it that I want people to see me as? Like, what are the characteristics in me I really want people to see? Or what are the things I want to be true about me? So once I start to list those things, like I want to be seen as someone who is intelligent. I want to be seen as someone who's witty. I want to be seen as someone who uses humor appropriately and is generally funny. I want to be seen as someone who follows after Jesus. I want to be seen as a Manchester United fan, as a University of Arizona fan. I want to be seen as someone who can take things that are a little bit complex, but still break it down in such a way that you understand it and that you appreciate it and value it the way that I do. You know, it's like there's these things that I want to be true about me, and that's what I'm going to try to present every time I meet someone new. So that's really the question of when I meet someone new, what are the things that I really want to emphasize about who I am? And then get honest of, okay, what do I want people to never know about me? Because when I can see that, now I can start to say, okay, who are the people around me who also are like that? Are any of these people people who are part of a joyful Hesed community or not? Because if you're realizing your idealized position has very little to do with the joyful Hesed community, then that means your stronger attachments are not Christ-like attachments, and it's not related to anyone who's trying to help you become like Jesus. So this is honestly, if you're newer to faith, if you've become a Christian later in your life, if you didn't grow up in the church, that's where there's really this wrestling that has to take place of who are your people from before that maybe you start to keep at more of an arm's length, and you don't cut them out of your life. That's not what the Bible teaches us. But maybe how do you start to form a stronger attachment and look for a stronger attachment to be formed in a joyful and a Hesed community that will help create and form a new group identity for you to update that idealized ego position to hopefully get something that's a little bit more Christ-focused. So that's really the tension, I think, for a lot of people is there's always people that we just feel drawn to.
Totally.
Because we're naturally wired that way. And the longer you've lived your life apart from trying to be a part of a joyful Hesed Christian community, the more neural pathways have been created in your brain that will still attract you to people who will not be healthy for you. And just recognize that. So the cool thing is God has made our brains in such a way that you can teach an old dog new tricks. They call it neuroplasticity.
Yep.
And the fact that we can form new pathways that change our habits and change the patterns that we fall into that help us change who we are.
Yeah.
And certainly change how we see ourselves and see the best version of ourselves.
It is possible.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So hence the gospel is never stalled out in the work that it can do within each of us in each of the seasons that we navigate.
The gospel's not just for the young ones.
Let's see. Who are your people, and would those closest to you say your strongest attachments are to Christ-centered, joyful Hesed community, or to something else? That's kind of the wrestling match that you're saying. So that's one of the questions on here, and so just another way to frame it in a simple way. Okay, how do I assess where I'm at? And again, it goes back to this joy and Hesed kind of community. And are my stronger attachments attached here? Because that's actually going to help me be more like Christ in that. So when we don't act like ourselves, think of a recent time when you didn't act like yourself, when either you're caught up in a sin or a behavior or an action or reaction that wasn't God's best, kind of out of character, what triggered that, and then who in your life could have helped remind you of who you are. So I don't know if there's an instance you want to talk about in your life or an instance with others that you've seen, kind of, keep names out of it, but just if you've seen something.
I'll use names. Because your name is in it.
Oh, awesome.
This isn't even a recent one, but the first thing, as you mentioned, that comes to mind, that was it was helpful for me. You had just come back from your sabbatical, and there was a person who had been coming to Elements while you were gone, and your first day back, you kind of got this negative email from this person and had no concept of what was really going on. So we worked through that, and then at the end of the month, I got another email that was just this long complaint, and I was just really frustrated because it was just this very hot and cold thing where it was a person who was trying to use our community and was demanding basically that the way that I lead, I needed to tell people what to do to form this community to be what this person wanted it to be, and it was just that's not how it works. I'm not here to regulate people's behaviors and things. That's not how pastoring works. I don't So I was just really frustrated to get another email about this. And I remember we were kind of debriefing that, and you were like, why does this bother you so much? I'm just curious. So you got curious. Why are you this is just stirring a lot of emotion in you, and I'm just curious why. And I was like, well, because I didn't just have a 3-month sabbatical to where I could be super chill on everything, Jack. All right? So that's the first thing that I'm thinking, and I didn't say that.
No, I was proud of you.
I really did think through all of that, and I could tell you why, and it's just you didn't have the experience that I had of seeing so much. But if I were to really think back, I struggle to where I start to get emotionally hijacked is when people don't follow the rules. As a justice-centered and oriented and a truth-oriented person, Scripture in a lot of ways is black and white of what is good and proper and right. And just the way that I raised,
And when people operate outside of that.
I understand that there's gray area in a lot of things, but I also recognize generally, like, for me, it's clear what's right and wrong and healthy and unhealthy. And when I see people willingly and actively choosing the things that are unhealthy, and it just it shows a level of selfishness that they don't, like, they think that they're the exception to every rule. That annoys me, and I have to know that. And so just
How many
you
of you
saying
identify with that?
that, but the way that you were like, you just don't, like, it feels like the emotion has a big grip on you, is what you had said, something along those lines. And that kind of led to a journey of, over the next month, as I was reading through the Proverbs, it really hit me when it was like, I think it's like Proverbs 26 or 29, that a fool gives full vent to his spirit. And I was like, oh, full vent. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I'm a fool when I do that. I can't just fully vent my emotions. And just because, like, I trust you and, like, that's a safe space, that doesn't mean that I need to pour out every emotion and every thought that I have as I'm venting about something. I need to learn how to only give proper vent, not full vent. And that was
That's
a relational thing. That's like, okay, I'm not a person. We are not people who give full vent to our spirit. We only vent what is proper to help me process what's happening and what I'm feeling and what I need to do in response to all of that. That's it. I don't need to give full vent.
Right.
When I give full vent, that's when I sin, because that's another proverb, like, where words are many, sin right
is
there.
not far behind.
Yeah.
Well, and I forget if this is a proverb or an old saying. Wise people know when to hold their tongue, and don't give full vent to everything. And so you can see how in a healthy relationship, and I would say, I mean, we're not perfect, but I feel like we're pretty healthy
Still generally healthy,
in
yeah.
our relationship, that we can help call each other up and forward, and not not just stay stuck. Because again, we're calling people back to group identity. This is who we really are. And I think that's the beautiful that you camped on this week. I'll touch more on next week too. The power of we statements, not I statements. And in a culture that's so individualized, I want it my way. I instead of we, and that's the power of group identity. Right. So, anything else you want to touch on just the power of group identity, and why that matters in our life, and then we'll get to some practical actions. Or any flyover from last night. Any last thing you want to really camp on to help us reiterate and kind of hold on to this?
Yeah, I kind of joked about how it can feel cult-like to create these kind of identity statements, which I said that last night, that I would actually argue that the reason it feels cult-like is because the church has neglected to do this for 300 years. That we have these creeds that help us to have doctrinal clarity on what we believe and what it means to call yourself a Christian. But we don't have character creeds that tell us what it's like to act like a Christian. So we really have to be intentional in forming those, but then we have to be intentional in repeating those together. So just the implementation of this in my Tuesday night college Bible study, I think it's been really interesting to see how people have taken to that and want us to continue to do that, because it's been helpful for them to write down and form their own kind of character statements, and then repeat those statements themselves. Like, they have it in the journal, and they go back and they look those over.
Yeah.
So if you have a joyful and a Hesed community that you already belong to, a smaller community of, whether that's an e-group, or you've been through like a discipleship group and you just got some homies that, like, you're still close to, that you connect with regularly, start to think of what that looks like and get specific. So start from a place of, what are my weaknesses? Where are the areas of sin that I know that I want to see some transformation in my life in 2026? Like, there's this thing that's had its hold on me and I don't like it. And I'm not proud that this is how I react. So form identity statements around that, and form those with people who have similar struggles. Work through that together to remind you of who you are. So we are not a people who doom scroll to numb ourselves after a long day. We're not a group of people who misuse sugar
Mm-hmm.
or alcohol or any form of food to mask emotional pain after a long day at work or after difficulty. Like, we're not a group of people who respond to people cutting us off in traffic by using profanity and obscene gestures. And that may seem kind of pedantic and
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous, but as you form those identity statements of, well, we're not a people who do this, you're training the fast track side of your brain of who you are to help you remember how to act like yourself, so that as something happens, that stimuli goes, or stimulus, whatever you want to call it, makes its way properly to your prefrontal cortex, so you remember who you are, so that you're able to act like yourself. And then have people who love you but aren't impressed with you, so that when you forget who you are, they're there to be like, hey man, I need to remind you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't a people who flip people off when they cut us off in traffic. We return blessings for cursings. That's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm rewiring my brain that I'm frustrated this person drove like that or cut me off. So I'm going to pray for them, and I'm going to pray blessing over their day, because
Mm-hmm.
that's who we are as Christians. I'm not going to curse them with my middle finger. So
Mm-hmm.
the more specific you can get on where you see your reactions not being Christ-like, the more you can form the identity statements that will help you remember who you are
Mm-hmm.
when you start to get triggered into situations where you might have forgotten who you were in the past.
Yeah. And you touched on this, and we obviously didn't have time to unpack it all, but really these "we are" statements are all throughout the New Testament. The Apostle Paul, Peter, John, all in each of these epistle letters and such. But maybe the bigger chunks will end with Colossians 3. I think that's a big chunk or a medium-sized chunk that Apostle Paul gives. But really the big chunk is Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is laying out, hey, this is my kingdom-minded people. This is who we are. And this is what we do. Is there anything you want to say to
Here's what
that?
the law would say. Here's what the Pharisees would have said. We're going to take it to a deeper level. This is what it means. And I think the important part is, even though it isn't written as a "we are a people who" kind of statement,
It kind of is.
you have to know that other than 1st and 2nd Timothy, other than Titus, Philemon, the majority of the epistles and the letters that were written in the New Testament were written to a body of believers. It was
Correct.
written to a church, to the entire group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So this being read out to a group of people is forming a group identity for those people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy to pull the "we" statements from that, because it was not written to individuals to take on themselves individually. It was written to a body of believers to give them the group identity of, this is what it means to say that Jesus is Lord and Savior of your life, and to live your life for
Under
his
his
glory
leadership.
and his purposes in obedience to his calling over you.
Yeah. So going back, maybe challenging some of the practical things, and then I'll rattle through some of these, and you chime in with any additional thoughts you want to give to it. So maybe read through Matthew 5, 6, and 7, which is the Sermon on the Mount. It's also in Luke, but a little shorter version. So Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is, and as you read through that, think about the "we are" statements. That this, if I'm a follower of Jesus, this is the kind of person I am, and I'm called to be, as my gifted identity that's been crafted and given to me, and I'm going to be called up into.
Yeah. And if you go back to the sermon on YouTube, if you go to, we always have a link to the sermon in the description of this video. If you go back there, we also always link to the Bible notes, the sermon notes that we have.
Yep.
So with those sermon notes, I included all of those "we are" statements from the Sermon on the Mount. Screenshot that. Just have that handy, so that as you read the Sermon on the Mount, when you finish it, go back to that, or read until you find the first one, and then just work your way through them and just see where they are.
In fact, the sermon notes are in. If you just go to the app and click sermon notes, it'll be up all week.
For this week,
you can actually access those and screenshot it. And there's some really good stuff in there that I'll actually put in for next week as well. But all right, so read through those. Read through Colossians 3, which we'll get to here in a person. I am a person, or we are a people who, and then kind of fill in some of those statements. Practice eye contact and joy. This week, intentionally make eye contact with people and let your face show delight when you see them, and notice how that affects both you and them. Again, this all builds on one another. So this is going back to joy, that we don't, just because we finished talking about joy doesn't mean you're finished doing joy and living this out.
Mhm.
So if that's not a practice, we challenge one another to smile more, and to enjoy that and let that come across. Give someone permission. So ask at least one person in your life, will you remind me who I am when I seem to be forgetting? Do you have someone in your life who isn't impressed with you, who could ask you the questions to help remind you who you are called to be, as a follower of Jesus? Anything you want to add to that? Or just how do we find those kind of people? How do we build those kind of relationships?
Yeah, pray. Start with prayer, because you want the Lord to bring that person to your life. If you're married, hopefully that's an easy one, and that your spouse is a person who really loves you deeply, but loves you enough that they're not impressed with you at all times, so they're willing to remind you of who you are. But if you don't have that person as a spouse, pray and just think about your joyful Hesed community that you're a part of, and who's somebody that you relate to closely in that group. And if you don't have that, pray that God would develop that and begin to lead you into that sort of a group where you can find that level of relationship with a person that you can have that.
So we talk often about accountability groups in the church culture, and accountability of like, okay, keep me from doing these bad things, quote unquote. But maybe that accountability should be, hey, would you help call me forward to be the kind of person I'm meant to be, and I'm being called to be? And so how do we approach
The identity group
the
is far more powerful.
accountability or the identity group as an accountability reality?
Yes.
But it's the positive sense, not avoiding the negative. It's being pulled into the positive side.
Right, because the negative side of accountability is, as you hold me accountable, if I'm in a place where I'm unwilling to change my behavior, I will eventually just eject from the group. I will remove myself from that, because it's
Or I'll
easier to
remove
do
you
that
from the group.
than it is for me to feel bad about what it is that I'm doing. So it's a shame response that we take.
Which we'll get into.
And that's where when we have identity instead, we're reminding each other who we are. And that makes all the difference in the world when it comes to how our brains work and just the science behind how they work, to where an identity group is far stronger at modifying and transforming behavior than an accountability group.
Yep. So help create that. And it may be that you find one or two other people and say, hey, this is what I'd like to have. And if you're willing to be a part of that, maybe we can go on a journey of creating that for one another, of calling each other forward. And I'll have you read Colossians 3 at the end here. So
getting it ready.
Getting your heads up here. Memorize an identity statement. Again, you put some of those in the sermon notes. And maybe if you want to look back through there and go, hey, what's the one identity statement that I feel like maybe I'm wrestling, or I forget this easy, and so I want to cement this more into the kind of character that I want to have, my idealized self. And so memorize that, print that out, put it on a sticky note on your mirror so you see it every morning, or make it your lock screen, and that when you open up your phone, you go, okay, that's who I am, and just so memorize that with that. So create an identity statement either for yourself or you and one other person, and then kind of put it in that practice. And then last one was just practice gentle reminders, giving each other permission to say, hey, you're kind of forgetting who you are, so let me remind you, which again is I am delighted to be here with you and in relationship with you. I have this sticky love, this Hesed connection. I'm not going anywhere. But I feel like maybe you're slipping and forgetting who you are, and so let me remind you who you are. And this is not always easy to play out or easy to receive sometimes, which is what we'll get into next week in that. So,
and yet this is parenting 101, by the way. So I hope if you've got children that you still have relationship with and influence with, and I'm specific in saying that because you may have adult children, but this still matters.
Totally.
That Especially if you have younger children, though, like these identity statements are so important to help your children know who they are and know that they have parents who joyfully delight in them and who have a hesed relationship with them, but call them into who they're going to be. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Like my nephew being younger when he was, 3, 4, 5, it was no, Timothy, like it's Thompsons, we do this, Thompsons
Mm-hmm.
do this, Thompsons do this. And it's just helping him know this is who we are. And so he's already a Thompson. He's just not fully become a Thompson yet because he's developing. And so that's your children. They're not fully who they're meant to be yet. You're there to help them develop into that. So not only is this helpful for just our own formation, this is great for parenting and great tools that you can use in the development of the character of your children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would even say, as a person with adult children now, it's important reminders to even give that blessing, even if it is from an angle of correction, but a blessing of reminders of this is who we are, and that adult children love to receive that as well, because it's an encouragement, especially when there's strain, like we have right now, in for one of our kids, of trying to call them back to who they are, and remind them of who they are. Now, how they live that out and play that out, it's going to be on them, but it's that constant reminder. I'm joyful to see you. I'm not going anywhere. It's sticky love, but I'm calling you back to who you are. And so, anyway, Colossians 3, one of your favorite passages.
Yep.
Paul gives this list of things of, hey, this is what you used to be, but we're going to put off that old self, and here's how we're going to put on the new self. This might be a great verse to memorize. So maybe we'll end with that, and then maybe would you just give a prayer of blessing, maybe toward or coming out of the scripture over our folks that are dialed in?
Yeah. And maybe I'll just probably use this passage as the blessing that I'll speak
There you
over,
go.
and then we'll leave it there. So Colossians 3, starting in verse 12, says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And may this be true of us. Whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him."
Have a blessed week, friends.